Thanks for joining me today for Think Big with Michael Zellner podcast, sponsored by Buckley's Grill and Sleepy Z's Masonry. My guest today joining me for episode 167 is Dr. Sheila Nazarian. Dr. Nazarian is a Jewish Iranian-American plastic surgeon and a very vocal advocate for the state of Israel and for Jews. She is a frequent guest on Newsmax, Fox News, and NewsNation. She's very well known as the host of Netflix's television series Skin Decision, and she also starred on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She was named Iranian Jewish Women's Organization Woman of the Year in 2016. Thanks for joining me today, Dr. Nazarian.
Thanks so much, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. You know, you were only 6 years old when you and your family, y'all went to a bazaar and you were smuggled out of Iran into Pakistan in the back of a pickup truck and covered by blankets and corn, you said.
Yes.
What do you remember most about that time?
You know, it's funny. I visited Dubai like a couple of years ago, and we did one of those sand adventure. You know, you go on the sand and then they like do a little belly dancing picnic for you in the middle of the desert. And so while we were in these, you know, big SUVs doing kind of like this in the sand, and it's kind of scary, it brought back the memory of us going through the desert. And I remember my mom had told me, you know, we're about to go through a roller coaster in the desert. And I'd forgotten what that meant. I remembered her saying that to me until I did the whole thing in Dubai last year. So I feel like the memories are continuing to come back. I just remember, you know, my mom would make it very palatable. Like when bombs were coming into Iran from Iraq during the Iran-Iraq War, she would tell us there's fireworks, let's go watch them in the window. So I think she just, you know, tried to make it palatable. She told me we're going to America. I was like, I'm going to meet Michael Jackson, you know, like very 6-year-old, I think, mentality. So, you know, I just think there's like, when you have a traumatic thing happen at that age, you remember flashes of visions of those moments. And that's what's kind of stayed with me.
And you actually were born in America, but went back there, right?
Correct. Yeah. My mom wanted a US citizen. So I call myself the OG anchor baby.
And you know, and obviously back during that time over there, it was just, I mean, crazy times. I mean, so you guys really had to get out, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, his life was in danger. One of his lab techs, he was a pathologist, told him, you know, you saved my eyesight, I'm going to save your life. You're on the list, you have to leave. So my father actually left before my mom, my sister, and I. And had to leave our passports with the government to say he was going on a medical conference trip.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so he was in Vienna waiting for us for 3 months before we were able to join him. He was helping us try to get visas to get us from Pakistan to Vienna. And then we were in Vienna for another 3 months waiting for visas to legally migrate to the US. Wow.
I can't imagine as a kid. I mean, you probably understood a little bit of it, but probably not all of it at the time, which maybe was probably better.
You know, I think now that I'm, you know, 44 and I'm at that age that, you know, can you imagine, like, there's people in California that are like, I want to move to Florida or I want to move to Texas. And it's like such a huge deal. And imagine my parents left everything behind, all the accomplishments, all the cushiness, all the wealth to come to a country of a different language with nothing to start over at the age that I'm at now. I mean, it's like, you know, and we're like, oh, should we move? Like, you know, to a different state? Like, you know, can you imagine the courage and, you know, the desperation, really,
right,
to say we have no other choice. There is no future here. We have to leave.
Absolutely. Can you share like a particular impactful or challenging moment that you've had, you know, where you faced maybe while speaking or, you know, somewhere in public, you know, while advocating for Israel, you know, and against Jew hatred and, you know, and how you overcame if it was challenging?
Oh my gosh. I think people are scared of me. No, I really, you know, haven't discovered or been I think the most traumatic thing before speaking one time is I was a keynote speaker at a medical conference. And the panel that was on stage right before, like I was literally standing, you know, at the side waiting for them to introduce me. And we're waiting for this one panel to finish before I get introduced. So I'm literally standing like next to the stage. And this person basically sandbags me and starts saying like, because I like to inject my own face with filler. I did it yesterday. Like I'm super sore right now and swollen. I just took a leave. But they're like, oh, this is unethical to inject your own face, and of course there's no research showing that at all, and everyone does it because it's you're there, you have the
Right.
skills.
Right.
And so he basically calls me unethical as I'm about to go on stage. And the title of my talk was Haters Gonna Hate, turning negativity into motivation. So it was like the perfect lead in,
Oh yeah.
actually. But I think what struck me at that moment was how far I've come from being a person who just wanted to be loved by everybody, patted on the head, and told what a good girl I am, to having gone through so much shit that I used to like get red in the face and like feel my heart in my throat with a bad Yelp review, right?
Right.
But
Right.
going from that to a place where I'm about to get in front of like hundreds of people, I got sandbagged right before I'm about to get on stage, and getting up there and being like, this proves my point.
Right.
Like haters gonna hate. And this just happened. He's talking about me, for those of you in the audience who don't know.
Right.
And literally people are screaming like queen, like, yeah, Dr. Nazarian, we love you, like, so it was just like such a journey to that moment. So I think, when on Jimmy Kimmel, when the celebrities read the meme tweets,
Yeah.
to be able to have gone through the same journey where you can get hated on in real time and let it just slip off your back and actually make it into an opportunity to show your professionalism and your maturity and your wit and get people to love you even more. That is such an arc. I mean, so I feel like life has kind of prepared me. So if I get hated on Instagram or in real life at this point, I have the skills to be able to turn that into an opportunity.
I talk a lot about the power of a moment and, how things happen in our lives. So one little moment can just change your life and you don't realize it. And that moment right there, it happened the way it was supposed to happen, right at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't, I can't imagine the hate that you probably get on social media. I don't know, maybe either under the comments or probably privately, even more of people sending messages and things like that. Do you respond to them or do you just ignore them?
So, two things. I started advocacy for Israel about 4 years ago. And so it was during the 2021 conflict. And I was seeing my colleagues just, saying the same, spewing the same stuff: apartheid, colonialist state, white supremacy state. I'm like, whatever, dude. And I had way more followers than they did. And so I was like, oh my God, I can't let this go down like this. And I just, I like to say my feed went from boobs and Botox to advocacy at that point. And then I think in one day I blocked like 2,000 people. I mean, it was like crazy.
Right.
And at that time, it wasn't so much this bots thing, like we weren't so aware of it. We kind of became aware of it at that point. So my advice number one is to go on your Instagram, go to your settings, go to comments, and put it on the setting that only the people you follow and people who follow you can comment. And that gets rid of all the bots. So that's number one. Number two, when somebody makes off-color or offensive comments on your page, if they're not following you, just block them. If they are following you, restrict them so they can keep commenting, but no one sees their comments. I mean, I have so many people just like writing paragraphs, and I'm like, it's so funny because no one's seeing your comment, right?
Right.
And I'll only engage if I think that person's really genuinely trying to learn. I won't engage if it's clearly someone who's been brainwashed from the age of 2 to hate Jews, and I think they're a lost soul. Really, I'm there to engage with people that it's worth my time to engage. I'm just going to show you one post too that I did, which was like so brilliant to help me like filter this. I wrote, what do you call it when someone hears the truth, sees the truth, but still believes the lies? So I posted that, and it's a really great way to filter the crazies that are following you just based off the comments. Like somebody
Sure.
wrote, you like sees the truth, but still tells lies, like you, so block. Like
Right.
sometimes you can like put a post to get people to comment to see and filter out your followers. So you can do that. And it's so funny, like people are just like they don't think about it that way, and they think like, oh, here's my chance to get her. Meanwhile, my whole intention was to filter you out.
Absolutely. And you know that other people that you don't engage with, it doesn't matter what you say, you're not going to change their mind anyway.
No, and I'm from Iran. It's so funny because 3 years ago, when I started posting, like, you guys, these people are being taught to hate Jews. It's in the curriculum. And I was posting videos of these kids in the classrooms, saying, oh, I have to kill all the Jews. They're fickle people and like all this stuff, right? Back then, people were like, oh, this is so phobic of this and you're so this. Now, I feel like everyone's posting that. And I literally 3 years ago, Michael, I was like, I'm a physician. You have to make the correct diagnosis to cure the disease, right? You can't just like ignore the diagnosis and say, oh, I don't have cancer, and then not treat it and hope that it's going to go away. That's not the way these things work. So I was always about the truth. I was like, you guys, I'm from Iran. We're taught to say death to Israel, death to America from like a very young age. This is what causes this sort of hatred, this brainwashing. And it's not just going to like flip and go away when they enter college. Like, this has started at the dinner table. Right. This has started K through 12. And unless we make the correct diagnosis, how can we treat this cancer of anti-Semitism?
Absolutely. Everyone knows what happened on October 7th, 2023 in Israel. In my opinion, and I think, probably most people's opinion, if they think rationally, the point should be very clear that Hamas is the bad guy, and all the people that were killed and, brutally murdered, raped, unfortunately, babies burned alive, beheaded, and kidnapped are the innocent victims of this attack. However, as we've seen on college campuses, and how now it's going into the cities. There are many people that see this the opposite way, and and blame Israel and see Hamas and the Palestinians government as having the right to do this. How the heck did we get to this point?
We've been here, Michael. I've been screaming it from the hills for years, and everyone's like, you're nuts. And now they're like, oh my God, how can the feminists condone rape? Like, there was anti-Semitism at the women's marches. You decided to close your eyes. The BLM Inc. movement, the nonprofit, the organization had anti-Semitism in their charter. You decided to close your eyes. When I called it out, when I brought Black pastors onto my Instagram live 3 years ago while people were marching in the streets to say, this is not a legit organization. Please go to your Black churches. Ask them what they need. Donate to your Black churches. This is a scam organization. You decided to close your eyes. I'm sorry it took October 7th to wake you up. You didn't listen. And this is the shock that you get. Well, I'm not empathetic towards you. Like, I'm not. You right. shouldn't have needed October 7th to wake up. I was on a podcast with this young girl, and she's like, Dr. Nazarian, why do you think it took October 7th for people to become active and to wake up? And I said, why did it take until October 7th for you to become active and wake up? Like, right. This has been here all along. I've been telling Columbia University for 10 years, you have an anti-Semitism problem. I stopped donating 10 years ago. People just don't want to come out of their friend zones. They don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to say things that make other people uncomfortable. I'm not that person. I'm a truth teller, for better or for worse. It's just the way I'm built.
Right. So, people live in a bubble world. They live in their own little bubble, and, anything outside of it just bounces off the bubble, and they just don't want to hear it.
They don't want to hear it. And they also will try to silence people who are the truth tellers. Right. They'll call them racist, phobic this, phobic that. It's interesting. I was talking about the oppression of women in these Islamist governments like Iran, where I'm from. Right. And people were like, no, that's Islamophobic. And then the whole Iranian revolution, the woman life freedom movement happened. And all of the Muslims in Iran said, we don't want this extremism. Are they Islamophobic too? You don't silence people who are fighting for women's rights. You don't silence people who are speaking up from life experience. And now you see these college students saying we can't condemn Iran because they're funding the resistance in Palestine. Meanwhile, they're raping and murdering women and young men and putting them in prison and silencing them. I posted a video on my Instagram yesterday of this Iranian woman who the hijab police shoved into an unmarked van, pushed her in as she's screaming and fighting. I mean, and these students on college campuses just close their eyes to that because Iran's funding the resistance. I mean, it's just like mental gymnastics that these kids are going through to condone, to say it's okay to rape.
Right.
It's okay to murder. Like all of your morals, all of your altruism that you say is something that you believe in, and you can completely go 180. I mean, that's the virus and the soul rot and the mental cancer that is anti-Semitism.
And you ask these students, many of them they've gone around and tried to interview them, what river or what sea is it? They don't know. Where's Israel on a map? They don't know. I mean, a lot of them have no idea what they're protesting against.
Michael, a lot of them don't, but a lot of them do. A lot of them do. And I think it's very easy to be like, oh, they just don't know, Yeah, some of them don't know for sure. Useful idiots,
right?
We call them. But a lot of them do know, and they are nefarious, and they are evil, and they do want a caliphate here in the US. They do want a caliphate in Canada. They do want a caliphate in England and France. And we have to not be afraid to say it because it's the correct diagnosis. They are saying it out loud. It is written in their charter, and we just say no. We have this naivete and this narcissism to think that everyone in the world wants to be us and shares our core values. And they don't. So much so, our core value, it's like essential to our core value, life.
Right.
What is essential to their core value? Martyrdom, death. It is a 180 difference between core value. And to deny that is to deny, first of all, their existence and how they define themselves, number one. And number two, it's just narcissistic. And it's just willful blindness. You need to wake up and listen to the people who have lived under that kind of government, who have lived in the region, and not trying to West-splain and try to say you understand something. You don't even know what you're talking about.
Right. And we saw what happened with Brexit over in Europe. I mean, they let a lot of these people in there thinking, they're going to come over here and they're going to conform to our ways. No, they came over there with the intention of you're going to start to conform into our ways.
Exactly. And, God saw it. I love this term I saw him use, suicidal empathy. You do not need to be suicidally empathetic. You don't need to sacrifice yourself for someone who wants you to be sacrificed.
Right.
You don't have to do that. And we're seeing a huge shift, aren't we, in Europe?
Yeah.
Huge shift.
Yeah. Now they're like, oh my God. I mean, look at London. I mean, it's horrible.
London has a huge shift. Belgium, France, huge shift towards, and I'm just hoping it doesn't go all the way to the right. It's a huge shift toward the right, which I think is a recalibration that's very much so needed. I just hope it stays within the bounds of ethics.
Right. And, and so many of these college professors, indoctrinate and brainwash these students. But now we've learned it even starts before college. It's starting in high school, elementary school.
Elementary school. Yeah. I mean, we saw videos of, these leftist organizations marching, these kindergartners, free Palestine, all this stuff. So it starts in K through 12, and there's so much work to do. Us Jews, we've been inventing things, we've been winning Nobel Prizes, we've been building businesses, and we've been completely asleep to this massive PR, educational, corporate, political strategy that the nefarious ones have been implementing for decades. And so we have to play catch up at this point. And, there's so much to do, whether it's in the K through 12, college campuses, diversity offices that have deemed Jews as white oppressors, and therefore everything's okay and all resistance is justified, including rape and murder and baking babies in ovens. So we gotta rein it in. We gotta rein it in politically. We gotta watch our borders. There's border laws for a reason.
Right.
We've got to rein in the anti-Semitism on college campuses. And I think it's moving in that direction. I think, people are understanding, okay, you give these people an inch, they're going to take over a building on our campus and hold our president and students hostage. So it's unfortunate that it has to get to a boiling point for people to listen. Certain states like Florida nipped it in the bud like in 2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
But here in Los Angeles, unless something drastic, horrific, hostage situation happens on campus, they won't listen. It's mind blowing. It's infuriating.
Yeah. Two of my lifelong friends that grew up with me here in Memphis live in California. One is a U.S. attorney in San Diego, and the other one lives in Palm Springs. And they say, I mean, it's just horrible out there. I mean, it's such a beautiful state that what it's turned into, and with what Gavin Newsom has done to that state is, oh my God.
You're absolutely right. And I can see UCLA from where I'm speaking to right now. And there's so many Persian Jews around this area. In Westwood, where UCLA is located, it's called Little Tehran. There's so many Persian Jews in this area. And when all of the flashbangs were going off on the UCLA campus, people said it sounded exactly like pre-revolutionary Iran, because everything in pre-revolutionary Iran started on the college campuses. And they were just like, oh my God, I feel like I'm back in 1978.
Wow. I didn't know that.
And guess who are the first people that were killed by the Islamic regime? The college students.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the whole thing, that's happening in the US and especially in California right now. Oh, why are the wealthy like this when there's homeless people? In Iran, it was the same talk. It was the Communist Party of Iran that overthrew the Shah. People don't know that.
Right.
Why is the Shah living in a castle where there's homeless people on the street? Everything happening in the US right now, the socialist Democrats of America, the socialist talk is exactly the same sounds, the same smells, the same vision, everything that happened in Iran. And that's why you hear so many Persian Jews being so vocal. Michael, think about the kids that you see speaking up on college campuses. The overwhelming majority are Persian Jews. The ones in front of Congress testifying about what anti-Semitism on their college campuses, they are Persian Jews. Why? Because we're first generation.
Right.
We know this. We didn't forget. We didn't forget what happened to our families because it's 80 years ago. This is new. We just got here 40 years ago.
Yep. You said, quote, I don't want to say I told you so. I would have given anything to have been wrong, but I was not. As I have long warned, Iran and its jihadist proxies pose a threat far beyond its borders, a threat that begins with the extermination of the Jewish state and people and ends with the destruction of the West, unquote. As you've talked about already, you've talked about how the way the Islamic Republic thinks that Israel is the little Satan and America is the great Satan. Why is it so hard for people in America and also around the world to believe that they have no plans to stop it destroying Israel, and they're coming for the West too? Because in many cases, as we have talked about, already seen, that they're already here.
It's naivete. It's denial. I mean, we've seen the same thing before, haven't we, Michael? In Germany. Oh, we're so integrated. They'll never do that to us. I have friends. They're my friends. They come over for dinner. They'll never turn me in. I mean, we've seen this before. It's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to think that this could happen here in the US, where people have been so comfortable and have forgotten what it means to be a Jew, have forgotten what Jew hatred is and what anti-Semitism is. It's very uncomfortable to say I'm not safe, or I have to call out people. Does that make me phobe? Does that make me an ist? Does that make me whatever? It's very uncomfortable. In the US, it's almost worse to be called racist than to be a murderer. I mean, it's like,
Right.
It ruins your life. just the same way as being called a murderer does, right? So people are just really afraid of this canceled. People have been silenced. Um, and I just, for me, my family left everything back in Iran and sacrificed so much to bring me to the US so I can have freedom of religion. I can have freedom of thought. I can have freedom of speech. So use it or lose it, America. You stop talking, you will lose your ability to talk.
And amazingly, so many people, on the far left, especially when they don't have an argument to what you say, they go to you're racist, you're Islamophobic, you're anti-Semitic, whatever. That's the only thing that they can come up with so many times. It's so funny when I hear people talk about Donald Trump being anti-Semitic, and I say, okay, let's look at this from a rational standpoint. His daughter, Ivanka, converted to Orthodox Judaism. I said, I'm Jewish. I'm conservative Jew. I said, she's more Jewish than I am and knows more because she had what she had to go through to become that an Orthodox Jew is just, and you and I both know what that studying and everything to become that. She married someone Jewish, raising her kids Orthodox Jew. Do you think for one second, if Donald Trump wasn't okay with it, that he would have welcomed Jared and the grandkids? I mean, he would have been like, no, you're not doing it. And so it's just like I always say, you can't speak rationally to irrational people.
Exactly. And, again, along those lines, I mean, we just talked about feminists that are condoning rape of Jewish women.
Right.
I mean, the inversion and the mind twisting and the soul rot that goes into that. Do you think that they're going to believe what you just said, which is so much less, offensive, and they just believe what they believe. They've been brainwashed to believe what they believe, and if October 7th hasn't woken them up, I don't know what will, or if anything will.
And and you talk about UCLA, how you could see it from where you are. I think that was a campus where they put that humongous big TV screen showing the video of October 7th.
Oh, they just say it's fake,
right?
Joe Biden's decline, it's fake.
Right.
It's gaslighting, right? Is gaslighting it's a leftist term? Am I wrong? I mean, but they're gaslighting to the peak levels, right? Everything they don't like is fake. There's a guy standing watching the October 7th footage that was filmed on the GoPro cameras of the terrorists themselves, and he's screaming at the screen, fake, fake, fake. And white people, white women, white suburban women, they're denying that rape happened when the terrorists themselves are admitting they raped people.
Yeah.
When we have GoPro footage of them raping people, we respect these women. We don't want to put that footage of a woman being raped out there for the world to see. But you say believe all women. Did you require footage of them being raped to believe all women before? Because you were marching with the Me Too movement.
Right.
But it just doesn't count when it's a Jew.
Right. That's what I say. You see what China does to the Muslims over there. You don't see anybody marching about that. You don't see anybody marching. We've been in Ukraine now for 2 years, and we don't see, people put the Ukrainian flag up and everything and talk about it. Obviously that's not in anymore. So you don't see much of that. No one marches about all the innocent people over there, unfortunately, that are killed during the war, but it's only with Jewish people.
Yeah, Michael, one of my friends went to, the encampment at UCLA, and she was talking to this guy, and she was like, well, why don't you guys say anything about Sudan? Why don't you say anything about the Uyghurs in China? He literally said, when it's the Jews, it hits different.
Oh my gosh. That's unbelievable. Wow. I really don't care what someone's political affiliation is, and this is good against evil. And what we're dealing with.
Michael, I think it's cute to say you don't care what someone's, political affiliation is, but nothing will change if we don't vote differently. I agree with that point. I don't think you're a bad person. I just think you're not affected enough, and you don't think this is important enough to vote differently. Because if you keep voting the same, we keep going down the same path. It's going to keep going. It's going to get worse.
Right.
Down the same path.
Right.
So yes, I don't care as a human, I'll have dinner with you, but we have to understand as a nation, if we don't vote differently, nothing's going to change. So I don't care on a personal level what your political affiliation is, but as a citizen of this country trying to save America from going down the same path as England and as France and much of Europe, I do care what your political affiliation is because I want to save America. I can't let
Right.
America go down. I'm not going to do it.
Well, and we saw what happened, when Donald Trump was president, he moved, the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. We had the Abraham Accords. No other president has been able to do any of that. We didn't have any wars. Gas prices were lower. Inflation was at 1.4% when he left office. And they want to say he's a dictator. He's going to do this. And he's going to, as you talk about the gaslighting that they're doing now. And we see, unfortunately, Joe Biden has always been the same person, and they just believed him, but even though he plagiarized so many speeches and things throughout and tells, his quote unquote truths that are not truths, almost during every single speech. He's been, in black churches and synagogues. He's, his uncle was killed by cannibals and so many things that have been proven not to be true. But people that watch networks like CNN and MSNBC, if they don't watch anything else and they just watch those, they don't hear the truth. They hear what they want them to hear, and they're being gaslit by these people.
Exactly. And, that's the really, tough part is because, when you're talking to someone and they're so passionate on one side, it's because they've been fed a completely different set of facts, in quotes. Right. And so they're so passionate because they really are intellectually lazy. Like I posted on my Instagram, I think it was last week, a friend of mine who posted the whole Charlottesville where he said there's good people or there's decent people on both sides.
Right.
And then we posted the whole speech. And he said there's good people on both sides. I'm not talking about the supremacists that need to be condemned. Right. I'm talking about the people that want our statues of our past presidents kept up. Those people have a right to want statues in our history to be kept up. We can talk about our history. We can talk about the rights and wrongs of our history, but don't erase history. If you erase history, you're bound to repeat it again. We should be learning from history so that we don't repeat the parts that were bad, right? And he said, then there's other people on the other sides who are offended, and they're good people too. So that's literally the whole speech. And I posted on my Instagram, and so many people, I mean, even Bill Ackman on X, was like, that's the first time I've heard that speech. And I realized the level to which the editing to make people feel like Trump is a demon has happened in mainstream media. So really, it takes us back to the point that it's intellectually lazy to not go back and listen to speeches ourselves. We don't have time, right? But then don't pose an opinion if you don't have time to go look it up for yourself, really. And we need to be holding mainstream media accountable. Like when CNN, MSNBC said the hostages were released.
Right. Oh my gosh.
That's gotten more views than like any of my recent videos. I went up there, I'm like, no, they weren't released. They were rescued. Just like words matter and spin matters, editing matters. And so we really have to hold mainstream media accountable and call them out. Thank God, social media is bad, but social media is great because we all have a platform and we can be bringing attention to things and calling things out as the little people, as the non-media people who don't have a network. We all have a network. We all have a voice. Even if you have 500 followers, you do a post that's amazing, it can go totally viral and get millions of views. I've had posts on X that have gotten more views than CNN.
Right.
So it's like we all have a voice now, and we should be using everything at our disposal to fight back. We can't just sit back and pray and say God's going to take care of it.
Right. And those people still to this day at CNN and MSNBC, they won't say the truth of what really happened in that speech in Charlottesville.
Exactly. Because it's against their narrative, right?
Right. And they won't say the truth of what really happened on January 6th, the whole production that ABC put together, leaving out a lot of things. They won't admit that Donald Trump did ask for the National Guard a few different times. And they won't ever admit it. It's everything Trump bad, 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 devil, 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 orange man bad. And they just won't admit it.
But I think also like the Trump campaign, or any campaign, right? They need to be bringing in the influencers. And I'm so glad that they are now. Like Trump did the first act, or first step or something like that. What was it called? That he let first-time offenders, like 100,000 of them, out of prison.
Right, right, right.
The first
I
violation, like
think
these people that were
Elizabeth Johnson, that the black woman that he let out, that right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then like literally they went back to see how many of those people repeat offended, and it was like zero.
Wow.
He let all these black people out of prison and no one knows about it. They talk about that program, but they don't give Trump the credit for it.
Right.
So I think that there needs to be a Trump campaign around, select influencers in the black community that go out and say, this is what he did for us. Right. And they didn't do that. And
Right.
certainly mainstream media is not going to amplify things like that. Same thing for the Jewish community, our community, Michael. They need to be getting influencers and getting people to say, like, these are the 10 things, 20 things he did for the Jewish community, and having them blast that out across social media platforms to raise awareness about all the great things that he's done for the Jews.
Yeah.
And, like, I think they're doing that. I think Laura Trump is doing a great job at the RNC. She's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant little firecracker. Love. And I think that they're finally realizing that, we need, just like the Jews are realizing, we need better PR because we can't depend on mainstream media to tell the truth.
Right. They just recently hired also Elizabeth Pipko.
Yes.
As I had her on a few weeks ago as our RNC spokesperson too. I saw she was on Gutfeld last night.
Yes, I saw.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, making those right moves are really important because the only way to get the truth out, you're right. If some of these people are not watching the right networks, they're not going to hear it unless they go on social media.
Exactly.
Yeah. I showed my mom that speech that you're talking about in Charlottesville, and she's more liberal for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I never even knew. I said, Mom, I tried to tell you. I said that they lied. They cut it off and said that's what he said to make him look bad. And I said, that's not what he said. So, but people don't know that unless they, do like what you're doing is showing those speeches and everything. So people can understand that there is alternative to what those networks are trying to tell people.
Yeah, and slowly just pulling people's head out of the sand,
Right.
And it's interesting, like a lot of people like us who came from countries like Iran, other countries with controlled state media, like we take what we see on the news with a grain of salt. Here in America, they're like, oh, it's the truth,
Right.
So for a lot of people that come from different countries, we're like, oh, that's cute. Like, you think the news is like the truth? Like, that's cute, But, in America, I think traditionally, I mean, I got to hand it to them. There were more ethical, non-activist journalists who were just trying to bring stories. It's not like that anymore. Look at the whole scandal at NPR, where, they're saying that there's like zero conservatives in that editing room. Zero.
Right. Thank goodness for whistleblowers.
Thank God.
Yes. It's been proven that Hamas uses hospitals and schools to shoot out bombs, uses their own innocent civilians as human shields. Why do you believe that the propaganda that Hamas spews out is able to brainwash so many people where they're seen as the victims here?
Well, I think that they are not afraid to show horrific images. There's a lot of horrific things, happening. It's a war. Horrific things happen in war. This is not a war that Israel wanted. Right. There's been 17 ceasefire deals, all of which have been turned down by Hamas. So I always say, if there's I posted this on X too. If there's a genocide, I've never known of a people being genocided that want to negotiate the terms of stopping their genocide.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Right. But they're first of all, I don't think they value privacy and life like the Jews do. The leaders of Hamas have come out and say that Palestinian blood needs to be spilled to get people riled up. It needs to be spilled for their cause. They don't care about the Palestinians. They don't care about showing their horrific images. They don't care about their privacy. They don't care. It feeds the fervor and escalates the passions of people. And literally, the leadership of Hamas went on TV and said that we need the Palestinian blood of women and children to stir our passion. They said that.
Unbelievable.
So they're really putting out that PR machine. We know there's also fabricated PR coming out of there. That's been shown many times. An old lady crying in front of a bloody body bag, and the body bag's moving.
Right.
There's a lot
Right.
of that happening as well. And also, if a hospital gets bombed, they put the launchers, the rocket launchers, on top of kindergartens, on top of hospitals, in civilian areas, in order to help their PR message, in order to say, look at the hospital, look at the school, look at the civilian area that was destroyed, look at the casualties. They do that on purpose, and that's a war crime.
And no one does what Israel does to try to warn people they're coming in, between the leaflets they drop, the phone calls, the texts, to try to get the civilians out. But
not just that, Michael, but think about every previous war. What country in war has been expected to provide food, to provide anything to the country that invaded them?
Yeah, none.
None. It's insane. It's insanity.
Outside of, we talked about Fox News, Newsmax, and NewsNation, America's supposed to be Israel's best friend in the world. The media doesn't tell that truth, and they don't want that truth out there. The most of the mainstream media. What is going on right now in Hamas and Hezbollah that isn't covered as much, which is even going to be a harder fight for Israel? And from how do you think that social media and the coverage, well, actually, let's just say regular media, the coverage these networks give and the newspapers has influenced the perception of what goes on over there, particularly with what happened on October 7th in people's minds?
I think that they constantly are demonizing Israel. I think a lot of these networks are being paid for by foreign bad agents like Qatar, like Al Jazeera. You saw the Musk debates,
Yeah.
I think it was 2 days ago, and how Douglas Murray was calling out that these people are getting paid by Qatar. They're getting paid by Al Jazeera. One of the people that was holding the hostages was a contributor to Al Jazeera. His dad was a physician, and they're holding hostages. And I went on, Fox, and I was like, if I knew that my neighbors had kidnapped people and were holding them hostage, and I say nothing, am I innocent? In America, that's called being complicit. Silence is complicity, right?
Right.
I mean, so let's talk about the innocent people. Let's talk about the innocent Palestinians. Show us your innocence. Come out and tell us where the hostages are. Where are you?
Right.
Silence is complicity. The left says that.
Right.
So, so I mean, it's just like, what it is, Michael, is like, it's all about consistency. Don't hold Jews to a different standard. Don't hold Palestinians to a different standard. Don't hold Israel to a different standard. Don't say Israel is in war, but they have to feed these people that want them dead. That 70%, according to a recent poll, believe that what happened on October 7th was good.
Wow.
What is this? It's like upside down world. That's like saying to the British forces, as you're destroying the Nazis, feed them.
Right. And it is amazing how many voices are silent in this country. There are some people in Hollywood that have spoken out. I think Patricia Heaton,
she's great,
and Deborah Messing and Jennifer Jason Leigh are a few that I've seen, and Michael Rappaport now.
Mm-hmm.
But many of them, and we know how Jewish Hollywood is, nothing. Are they just afraid? Are they just scared?
Yeah, I mean, they're scared of their careers. Money matters more. I mean, physicians too. There's Israeli physicians in Los Angeles, I'm not Israeli, that they're not even speaking up. Their feeds are still full of, the same sort of TikToks and the same sort of whatevers. They're not speaking up because their careers and money matters more than the survival of their people. And it's sad to see, and I call it out all the time. I never lived in Israel. I have family there, but I've never lived in Israel. Why am I speaking up more than you are? And you're from there and your entire family's there.
Right.
And yet you're still just posting like surgery? Like, really?
Right. It doesn't make any sense.
It's cowardice. It's Um, I just, what's more important than survival? I
I
don't
know.
know.
I agree. Um, no true consequences also for these students or violent protesters. The Washington Free Beacon reported this past week, quote, Harvard student facing criminal charges for assaulting Israeli classmate lands job in D.C. public defender's office, unquote. I mean, seriously? Why would they stop doing any of this when they can continue to do it and then still get big career opportunities?
Well, exactly. And I think that the Jews have kind of come together in like a very guerrilla grassroots way, to try to call these people out and bring awareness to these things. But you're absolutely right. I mean, we make 2% of the US population.
Right.
We can't do this on our own. If we don't have help in holding people accountable and consequences and help in enforcing consequences for defacing public, monuments, for telling Jews on campus that they're not allowed in certain spaces. So it's just, if we need to be very firm. You cannot give an inch. And I think like America still hasn't learned that lesson. I learned that lesson during COVID, Michael. Before COVID, I wouldn't let my kids play shooting games, like video games. I wouldn't like, I never thought that I would be a CCW and a gun owner like ever in my life, but and I never understood like, why don't they just give up the machine guns? Like who needs the machine, who needs the automatic weapons? Like, why don't they just give it up? Right. I didn't understand that before COVID. Then COVID happened and they were like, wear a mask. We're like, okay. They're like, be 6 feet apart from each other. We're like, okay. They're like, get the shot, get the shot, get the shot, get the shot. Like, don't see your parents while they're dying in the hospital. Like all this stuff. And I was like, holy shit, you cannot give an inch.
Right.
They won't stop, and with the gun ownership, it's like if they give up the automatic weapons, you think all the gun lobbying people are going to go away? No, they're going to go after the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one until we're Canada. And so I really just, at this point, like when it came to CNN saying the hostages were released, not rescued, I went on my Instagram. We cannot give an inch. We cannot let them get away with this much because they just keep going. And I think that's something that the Democrats have done really well. They push, push, push until they're stopped, and then they stay there for a while. And then they push, 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 and they stop and they stay there for a while until they get what they want. And with the Republicans, I feel like they're not as good as that, Michael. Like take abortion, for example, right? They just want end abortion. Okay, I understand why you want to end abortion. I get it, but you can't just like end abortion without doing other things like education, like free condoms, like, free like other things in order to get girls to understand, how this happens, what you can do to protect yourself. Incest is huge. Getting people resources so they get out of those relationships, educating young people that if they're in that sort of household to ask for help, resources for those young people to get out. Like there's a lot of things you have to do. Like I was a medical student, Michael, in the Bronx. We did volunteer work in a school in the Bronx. 1 out of 4 kids had STDs. And the majority of them, it wasn't because they were giving it to each other. A lot of them, it was their mother's boyfriend that was raping them. And getting them pregnant. So it's like we have to do certain things before we just say blah, and we're not good at that. And I understand the reasoning behind not being good at that, but in order to get to that place, you have to go little by little, and you have to bring support system and education and things like that to make it make sense. And we're not good at that. And it could cause us like to lose elections.
And now we found out the 6 feet social distancing that was made up.
Made up.
Masks didn't work. The shot didn't keep anybody from spreading or getting it. They just say, oh, well, it helped you not get maybe ass sick and all that stuff there. I don't know if that's true or not. Then we see Dr. Fauci now back on television doing his tours and stuff like that. I think that man is a sociopath. When I see him speak, because he can just sit there and lie like it's nothing. And I love it when Rand Paul calls him out being a doctor himself, because the brainwashing is unbelievable. And you have to have your mind be able to be open to the truth and not just see it from one way. And I think a big part of that is just having a lot of empathy.
Yeah, and I think for me, I was very trusting still of the medical society. Like I remember when the vaccine became available, I took my elderly father. When they called my name, I pushed him in front so he would get his vaccination first. I was very much trusting. And so I got the, first two vaccines. And I was like, then I started being like, wait a second. What really tipped it off for me, Michael, is in California, they actually passed a law that if you speak out of line or question the vaccine, they'll take your medical license away. And thank God a judge put an end to it. But it actually made it through the California legislature, and then a judge said no. The judiciary stopped it. And I was like, wait, what? We can't question science. That's the whole point of science. Beta blockers like metoprolol, it's gone back and forth 9,000 times. It's good, it's not good. It's good, it's not good. Take it before surgery, don't take it before surgery. Take it. That's the whole, science is religion. It's meant to be questioned. It's meant to be grappled with. It's meant to have repeat studies proving it to be true or not true. It has to be repeatable. And when they said you can't say anything against it, I was like, I'm back in Iran. I'm back in Iran. We're being silenced. And the funny thing is the left keeps saying Trump is the fascist. Trump is the dictator. What do dictators do? They silence dissenters. They put opposition in jail. Right. This is what happened in Iran, right? This is what happens in North Korea. North Korea, I have a friend who escaped North Korea. She's one of 250 people in the whole wide world that have gotten out of North Korea. And she said they used to tell us the birds can hear our thoughts and we'll go tell someone. Right? So who's the side right now that's trying to silence people? Who's the side right now that's brought in millions of people across our southern border and is trying to give them citizenship so they can vote? So that there will never be a Republican president ever again. Who's the side doing that?
Right.
But they keep saying that that's Trump. That's Trump. Trump's trying to have conversations. Trump's not trying to silence anybody.
He'll talk to anyone.
He'll talk to anybody. Yeah. And this is the side that is trying to make it a one-party system by letting in all these people and giving them a way to vote, right? They're the ones trying to cancel culture, calling people ist this and phobe that if they question anything. They're the ones that passed the law in California trying to silence physicians from asking questions, which is the basis of scientific research. Hypothesis, questions. So it's just again, backwards world.
Yes.
Gaslighting.
When Biden reversed that executive order that Trump had on day one and started letting them come in, we have no idea how many. I've heard numbers anywhere from 8 to 15 million, and we have no idea how many, at least that many have come in here. And we see on news almost every day.
Every single day. And CPAC yesterday on their Instagram, it's a 4-minute video they put out of every single young woman that's been raped, murdered, stabbed by these people that are in our country illegally.
Okay.
It is so powerful. It is.
I gotta watch it.
Victim after victim after victim. Why isn't there a class action lawsuit against the Biden administration of all of these families that lives could have been saved? Women's lives could not have been ruined by rape and gang rape.
And they won't even mention their names.
They won't, it's these families need to get together. If a lawyer is watching this, there needs to be a class action lawsuit against the administration for opening the borders and allowing these things to happen in our country. I'm sorry.
I agree with you 100%.
What if that was your kid? God forbid. What if that was someone you knew? God forbid. But instead you just do this.
Yep.
Is that empathy? That's not empathy, Michael.
No, that's not empathy.
Virtue.
Yeah, I tried to explain that. I was telling my mom, I said, you understand the border was open purposely. They wanted all these people to come in here. And she's like, why? I go, Mom, because they want all these people to vote. They don't care about them. They're taking care of them with money and hotels and cell phones. And look at our homeless people and our veterans on the street that are not getting any, and people working 2 and 3 jobs that can't even put food on the table or pay gas or anything. And all these people are coming in here not the right way and getting all these extra benefits.
Yeah, they're just trying to buy votes. They're buying the votes of these migrants that they've let in. They're buying the votes of the young people, which I don't think is working so much anymore, by trying to forgive their student loans. They're trying to buy the votes of other people by forgiving their healthcare bills. They're trying to just like give, give, give. But all of that giving comes at a big cost. And I think people don't understand its effect on inflation. You know, inflation affects all of us in every way. So yes, you might be seeing it on one end, but you're going to get it on the other end.
Yeah, I'm going to the grocery store today to go shopping, and I already know where I was spending probably when I would go $300 to $400 a few years ago. Now it's $500 to $600, for the same stuff. So
right.
Yeah, you can see it in everyday life. Middle class Americans, they see it.
Yeah, I know.
I have so much more that I would like to talk to you about. I would love to bring you back on if you come back on for a part two.
Sure.
How can people find you and follow you on social media?
I'm at Dr. Nazarian spelled out on X. I'm at Dr. Sheila Nazarian on Instagram with a DR. And oh my gosh, I think those are the best places. You'll find me from those, all the other places.
And yeah, like I said earlier, seeing you, I first saw you as a guest on television and everything, and then started following you and following your videos and everything. And I was just like, how powerful is this? And I mean, the things that you put out there, thank you for being so outspoken and doing what you're doing, because I know you're affecting a lot of people's lives.
Michael, it's just about telling the truth. It's just about saying the emperor has no clothes. It's that one person that needs to give other people permission to speak facts, to speak common sense. We cannot allow these crazies and these crazy ideologies that are not working to continue in our country and in our communities. It's not a world we want to leave to our younger siblings and our children and our grandchildren. And we're not saying anything weird. It's just common sense. The emperor has no clothes.
Absolutely. Doctor, thank you so much for coming on today. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thanks, Michael.
My pleasure.